For the past year, I've been working with the Onward Foundation, looking at documents and photographs from the Rainbow Bridge Monument Valley expedition. I've loved this region all my life, traveled, camped, lived there, and explored and continue to try to increase my knowledge of this area. So when Elizabeth and I met, I told her this, and I told her I had worked as a Native American docent in the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, and that I had been associated and worked with the Moche Archive at UCLA and getting it ready and packed off to Dunbarton Oaks. So all of these interests and ideas that Elizabeth and I shared seemed to make us a perfect fit for me to join this project. So it's been a fantastic year for me, and I've enjoyed everything I've seen. And what my job has been attaching metadata so far to over 8,000 images. And we have a huge project in front of us, more to go, but I'm going to read you exactly what metadata means and what it is involved to attach this to images so that we can bring them up on the screen out of our database whenever we want. So that I don't ramble as well, it's a lot easier to read the description of metadata than to speak freely here. As I said, 8,000 images. Metadata is metadata are search words that allow one to find a desired image that has been scanned into a computer. To begin the work of systematically labeling the images, we developed scientific and ethnographic categories into which we could sort all the material we have, from photographs to the journals to everything. Within these categories, we selected a set of descriptive words that could be attached to hundreds of different images. When this was completed, the images were transferred into a computer program called Bridge. Using Bridge, I viewed each image and attached appropriate words from the vocabulary that we had developed. Once the photos were labeled, we can then select a subject we want to find, and the images in the database, by typing in that descriptive word that we have attached to it, those images will come up on our screen. We use a Bridge Find program, and it's very simple once you have all your data in there. For instance, all the photos of maybe houses, we would attach the word house, structure, dwelling, habitat to that image, so that anybody searching this, they might not necessarily see house, they might see dwelling. They put that word in, and all those images will come up on the screen. So this has been a process that's been virtually intriguing, enlightening, and delightful for me. I've enjoyed looking at all of these images, and tonight I'm going to share just some of my special ones. I'm going to kind of run the spectrum of what I've seen here. This first announcement, you've all heard the Marine Corps rallying call, we're looking for a few good men. Well, Ansel Hall kind of put out the same kind of call, trying to engage people to join his expedition in 1933. This is a poster from 37. We can't find the first one yet. So I'm using the 37 poster. Tells you who's eligible. But he gathered together scientists of all fields, artists, photographers, pilots, adventurers, members of the Explorers Club of New York City, ranchers and traders in the region, and a lot of members of the Native American community there as well. So into this, into this landscape, and this is a map of the area. Kayenta was the hub where everybody met. Now this is the Utah-Arizona border. Here's the Colorado River. The San Juan branches off here. This area encompassed about 3,000 square miles of harsh, rugged, desolate terrain, but also incredibly beautiful. The Rainbow Bridge area is over here. Page, Utah is now right over in this area. Monument Valley is up in this area, right here. So that gives you a kind of an idea of the area. This whole area, the 3,000 miles, was the terrain that was surveyed. And we can go on to the next one. Ansel Hall. Here's a photograph of Ansel Hall standing here. And we can go into the next one too. This is also Ansel Hall. He worked.
Is he an archaeologist? Or what
he
is
worked
his
for the
background?
National Park Service. He was the director of the Western Sector. So he was one of the primary organizers of this expedition. And now we're going to look at some landscape shots. And you can imagine these people from all over the country, Chicago, New York, and Berkeley, primary, coming out here and looking at this landscape that was like something they had not seen before. Ancient ruins from the Anasazi, 1,000 years old.
Was that
Plun-
Kitsu?
Batatican. Plunging canyons, wild rivers. It must have been overwhelming for these young guys. You can pause here. Ford Motor Company sponsored a lot of this work. They provided 50 vehicles to this expedition. They had just developed their V8 engine and they were anxious to try it out on some rugged terrain, see how it worked so they could promote it. They made film, they sponsored and wrote about this expedition in the press, and they were one of the first corporate sponsors of something like this. Here's another example of what appeared in Ford News, an article on the expedition. Now the expedition, this is a scene from New York City. They're ready to start out and head towards Kayenta.
Wow.
There's caravanning. We had 355 expeditioners, 65 Navajo men, 3 women expeditioners, 50 Navajo women, and 50 Ford vehicles that were donated. And this is some of the struggles. It wasn't always easy getting there, but they were determined.
Wow. Woody.
Yeah, lots of woodies. This is Kayenta as it looked in the 30s. Now it's not too much bigger. It's got, as Lithuania said, 3 traffic lights now and a crossroads. And it has a Sonic burger, which is my personal favorite. But this is Kayenta. This is the Weatherall trading post. I mentioned traders and ranchers. The Weatherall family had lived in the Four Corners region for generations. This is John and this is Louisa. They had their trading post there. These are some interior shots of their trading post. Louisa wanted to make this a very civil place for people to come. She set formal dining tables for her meals. She had beautiful china. They had a guest register that people, and Teddy Roosevelt's name is in this. They kept this register for years. This is the Rainbow Bridge Monument Valley expedition with some names. And this is a cartoon that a guy named Kelly drew in there, and it must show what he felt it was like to get out there. This is a Weatherall family photo with also probably a Navajo with them. This is Clayton Weatherall. He was the father of John Weatherall, the head of the clan. And they started out ranching in Mancos, Colorado. Here's another Weatherall family photograph. This is Golding's trading post, and you can see this is in Monument Valley, another spot of rest and refreshment along the way, so to speak. It's still in existence today. And this is, the next series of photographs are going to be the Navajo community that surrounded Kayenta and that was participatory in this expedition. And the crew got to know these people and vice versa. It's a great series of images. And we have so many, it was hard to pick the ones that I wanted to show. Spread making and cooking. And this is just a charming portrait of a young boy. A lot of weaving, beautiful Navajo blankets. This is the mud ceremony, the mud dance on top of a hogan. And you can imagine the cultural differences that the people came together and shared with each other and learned from each other. Now, this is Marsh Pass. This was the primary field station at Marsh Pass. This is another view of Marsh Pass and some great vehicle shots. The dining hall in Marsh Pass. These are some of the fly camps. A fly camp was a remote camp that was temporary and could be moved around, that were set up out to access certain sites in this 3,000 square mile area. This is the shirt, the motto, Rainbow Bridge Monument Valley Expedition. It's the 1937 version. We think we should have shirts made. The next series of photos are of these expeditioneers, scientists working on their particular field with the material they gathered. Out surveying. It was rugged territory. Some of the climbs and some of the accessible points were really difficult. This is Dr. Babington. He was a doctor in the region with the crew in the Navajo. Just some portraits, and one of my next jobs is going to be trying to identify particular faces. This is Milton Wetherall. Some of the people I don't know. A man like this I have to be able to start identifying. Excavated material. Out in the trenches. Dendrochronology. This is Hargrave. He was from University of Arizona, I believe. Dinosaur footprints.
Oh yeah, look at that.
These are horse ladders that were constructed so that points could be accessible by mules going up to these really high areas. Trail Canyon from Skeleton Mesa. Here's another climbing the horse ladder. And this guy looks like about 12 years old. Pictures of camp life, resting, hanging out. Just one of the fly station, fly camps, work tables.
Nice.
This is Ben Wetherall. More trench work. This is a kiva in one of the cliff dwellings. The grinding bins. This is Wally. He was the camp cook. There he is. This is a great portrait. It just kind of represents a man of the Depression era to me, that look. And this is the guy eating Wally's food. I have to identify him yet. This is the water source. I mean, it was all very primitive by what these guys were used to. The water wagon. Bathing. If he knew he was being viewed. Transporting gear at Marsh Pass. Just the day-to-day life of shaving and the amenities of making yourself comfortable. Both worn out. Pause here a second, please. At times, it wasn't all work. There was a lot of fun and games that happened between the Navajo community and the expeditioneers, and they'd have a lot of competitions, and you'll see a few of these examples. Wrestling with each other, wrestling tug of wars between the Navajo community and the Crew guys. So that this is kind of a wrestling competition. They'd find things to do like this to amuse themselves. This one's particularly interesting. It's a perspective taken from very high, but it's suckers navigating rapids below Rainbow Natural Bridge. And these little dots, I think, are their boats down there.
Oh my God.
Here's the Mud Babies, it's titled. Swimming, slick sliders. Okay. This is the sleeping bag contest, which amused me. I'm trying to figure out what it exactly was, but it involved getting in and out of the sleeping bag, and what they did in there, I don't know. I don't know whether they were to go in, take their clothes off, and see who could get out the fastest, or go in naked, put their clothes on, and get out. So, but you know, apparently it was great hijinks that was part of their time here. Go ahead. I have several group shots that are going to be one of my challenges, to identify all the people in them.
Wow.
Staff at Marsh Pass. This is the dining hall scene at Marsh Pass. Some of the guys are so young. And they all look so skinny, too.
Yeah.
These guys are partially identified, but we know this is the guy with the blonde hair with the rodents from before. Now, this is Ralph Beals at UCLA. He was one of the archaeologists that were heading up the project. He worked at UCLA, and he the collections are still there at UCLA. Go ahead. Watson Smith, and this is in the attic of Powell Library at UCLA. That's where they worked back then. Notice the Baby Ruth candy bar box.
And Kerr jars, the previous picture, Kerr.
Kerr, yeah.
Del Monte.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
same, brand still existing.
And this is this Elizabeth, is this Hargrave?
That's Brainerd.
Brainerd, okay. He was the other one at UCLA. Okay, now, some of the technology that was used then, innovative technology, fold boats. This was a product that came from a company in Los Angeles, the Gilbuck Company. These were collapsible boats that could be easily transported and then reassembled anywhere and used with the hopes that they wouldn't sink. Here's an example of launching the fold boats into the San Juan and going down the river. And these are the suckers that are in the rapids from what we saw before. The other aspect of technology was aerial photography. This is the landing strip at Kayenta, believe it or not, and the plane that was used to take the aerial photography. Here's a close-up of it with a mechanic working on it. This was such a novel thing to be doing that it attracted lots of people that wanted to check it out when it landed and took off. Scenic Airways, Inc.
Yeah.
This is John and Louisa Weatherall again. We're not sure who this woman is yet. These are some of the aerial shots that were taken, and you can just appreciate the vastness, the ruggedness of this terrain. This is looking down on Train Rock. Some of them are named. Comb Ridge, Monument Valley, Navajo Mountain, Paiute Canyon. This is a road to Rainbow Lodge, which no longer is there. It burned down, but it used to be a lodge people could stay at after a really rugged travel there near Monument Valley. There's the Rainbow Bridge there. And this is from the north part of Navajo Mountain. Now, the information that resulted from this expedition were many reports, drawings, journals, photography, films. Elizabeth mentioned this. This is the cover of one of the preliminary bulletins of 1936. We have photographs of every page through that. This is a journal, a personal journal, making notes, drawing rock formations and constructions of rooms. These are field surveys, site surveys. This is one by Watson Smith. This is the kind of information they compiled. This is a log of all the sites listed here, where they were located, what they found. This is a section of geological rock formations of the area. These are maps that were done of the different canyons. Some of the material that was excavated. Beautiful ceramics. This is a painting of that jar that you saw before. Another painting. These are some examples of drawings and watercolors that are in the UCLA collection. And this is the lab at UCLA that houses this material. Wow. This, and you can pause here, please. There were two men, Russell White and James Russell, that were teachers at a technical school in Fresno, California. And they wanted to join this expedition. And the idea proposed was that people could earn credit towards a master's degree by writing up a report and working with this project. These two men put together a report, and the next photographs you're going to see are some of the photographs that they included in their report. These are, a lot of them have to do with Navajo ceremonial and Navajo family activities. That's a beautiful portrait. This is the chicken pole. They'd bury a chicken and ride up and try to ride fast, try to pull it out. And here we go with the crew and the guys tug of warring here, eating, just great camaraderie. And we're going to end here with the iconic view of Rainbow Bridge, which the National Capitol can fit under this bridge. Wow. That's the scale of this bridge. That's how high it is. And this image.
Goodness. Don't jump.
Yeah, don't jump. Okay, that's it. Thank you.